Hi everyone, I hope that you are doing well. I am here today to do an update on the quilt coat project that I posted about a couple of months ago. I have made quite a bit of progress since that video, and so I just wanted to show you all where I'm at in the project now before I kind of change gears and go on to the next stage of my quilt coat. So in the last video, I just kind of introduced the project and showed making some of my triangle quilt blocks. So here is an example of one. Each of the quilt blocks has the piece in the center and then two pieces on either side that match. And then all the rest of them are just scrappy from my pile of scraps, which shockingly, I still have a lot of scraps left. So I may need another scrappy project after this one is done, who knows. But I have so far made 106 triangles. 105 of them have this exact pattern, just in different colors from the ombre fabric that I used. And then one of them has a different fabric on either side of the center because I ran out of the other one. So that is why I'm stopping at this number right here, because I have only two more of the center pieces and no more of this fabric or any more fabrics from that collection. And so that basically kind of determines where I can go with this project, and it is the 106 blocks. I also did make, however, 4 more blocks that are missing the centers, and these have a particular use for how I'm going to be placing the pattern pieces, to where I didn't want to waste full triangles when I know for a fact that they're going to be cut into pieces. But before I talk more about that, let's talk about the pattern I have finally selected for my quilt coat. So I have been eyeballing several people on Instagram who make a lot of quilt coats, and I was looking at the patterns they use, and I just wasn't in love with any of them in particular, except for one. There was one I really liked, but I could not remember what pattern that person had used. So I decided, you know what, I don't even need to buy any more patterns. I have over 650 patterns in my stash. I don't need to buy any more, and in fact I've put myself on a brand new pattern buying ban. So I've already gone like 4 or 6 months without buying any brand new patterns. I've bought some secondhand patterns, but I am trying to not buy any more new patterns for as long as I can. So anyway, side note. But I went through my stash and I pulled out this pattern. This was one I had bought in the spring, I believe. I think this is one of the very last new patterns that I did buy. And I used it for a costume already. I will insert a picture of that. But it was a Star Wars costume that I wanted to make, and I already had all the materials. I just had to pick up the pattern. So I did alter the pattern slightly for that costume so that the jacket here met in the middle and actually overlapped a little bit, so I could put some closures on it. But I did make it quite fitted. So this pattern has already been cut down to a size 12, which is actually a smaller size than what I normally even could wear. And it doesn't meet in the middle, so it is not the ideal pattern. I would have to size it back up and then do some alterations on it, and I was not really thrilled with that because I was hoping to get away with not really making a mock-up for this coat. Instead, I want to just use the lining. I want to do a flannel lining and kind of use that as a mock-up. Make that first, make sure that it's going to fit good and everything, and then just use that to then line the coat. So I did go through my pattern stash again, and this time a pattern stood out that I had not really paid attention to before, and it is this pattern from 1961. It's Simplicity 4110. And the envelope is in kind of rough shape, but the pattern pieces are all here, which is fantastic because recently I've had several vintage patterns in a row that were missing pieces. So I pulled this one out. I really like it because I had already been considering doing a hood. This one may need to be sized up just a little bit, but I like the nice overlap. I think the length is great. The sleeves look roomy enough for it to be a quilted coat. And there are pockets. These are not the exact pockets I want to go with, but it does give an indication of the placement and size of pockets that would work for this coat. So I'm really excited about this. But before I had picked out that pattern, I had been using this one just to play around with the layout of the pieces to see if I was even close to having enough, about how many it would take for each piece, and just kind of getting a feel for how this was all going to go together. So the other day, while the kids weren't home, I laid out almost all of my pieces on the floor and started laying out the pattern pieces, trying to take into account how much the pieces would shrink with the seam allowances once they were sewn and all of that. And it looks like I can do sections that are 5 rows long, and by a row I mean when I sew 2 pieces together to make a square, I consider this 1 row. So 2 pieces per square, 5 squares long, should, based on this pattern, should be long enough for cutting the front of the coat, the back of the coat. I have not had a chance to double check it with this pattern, but hopefully these pieces are pretty similar in size, because that was just barely going to make it to where I had enough pieces for the front, the back, the sleeves, and then hopefully the pockets, and then I have to have a different plan for the hood and the facing. So I want to play with the ombre because I absolutely love how this is an ombre. It goes from green to blue to purple to pink to orange. And so I decided I want the front of the coat to start green at the bottom and work its way up to blue. Then I want one sleeve to be purple to blue and the other one pink to purple, and then the back of the coat would start out pink at the top and work its way down to orange. So I hope that made sense. Since this is a spiderweb quilt like that one right there, I want to place the sleeves, because the quilt has basically stars and then the webs. And so I want to have it so the web is right here in the curve of the sleeve, and the sleeve like sits up into that. And that is the reason I made these extra pieces, because these will be placed so that they make an, sorry, it's really hard to hold these up, so that they make an extra set of webs that I can sew onto the full pieces, so that when I cut the curve of the sleeve out, I am not wasting the triangles that aren't being used in that area. I just made the web portions themselves that I can add onto it to have that little bit at the top of the sleeve and not waste the other pieces, since I am limited on the amount of those that I can make. So each type of quilt batting has a certain number of inches that you can have between the quilting lines, and I definitely went larger than that on the previous quilt just because I wasn't really sure how to quilt it. I didn't really want to quilt it, and it's just for display purposes really. So not a big deal on that one, but since this one is going to be worn and washed and you know, loved and all of that, I want to make sure I do closer quilting so that it can be washed and the batting won't get you know, yucky on the inside. So I do not know what I'm going to use yet, but it will probably be some kind of random design all through like the spider web part maybe. Not really certain. I don't know, but I do have a stippling foot now. I think that's what it's called, where it is for like free motion quilting, free motion embroidery, different things like that. So I'm going to give that a try. We'll see how it works. Who knows? But yeah, so I think that is everything I have to update you all about on my quilt coat. I'm very excited. I have made a lot of progress just in the last couple of weeks when I just really wanted to work on something and didn't have another project going that I wanted to work on, or didn't have enough time to work on a bigger project. And so I worked on these triangles and really just busted out a whole bunch of them in the past couple weeks. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to be moving on to the next stage of the project. But I'm also a little sad that I no longer have my scrappy project where I can just sit down and sew like 2 lines and then go do something else. And so I may have to start another easy little always ongoing project like the blocks themselves, so that I have something like that to work on again. So if you have ideas for something like that, where it's just a project where you can just work on a little here and a little there and it's not a big deal, there's no precise cutting. If you have ideas for a project like that, definitely leave them in the comments down below. Hit that like button if you are excited about seeing how this coat turns out. And until next time, happy sewing.